Hey everyone, how's it going? So last time we got set up with MongoDB, so we created a project and we created a cluster inside of that project. So here we go, we have this Twitter clone cluster. So what we're going to do now is connect to it. Well, at least we'll take the steps to connect to it. I'm not sure whether we'll connect to it in this video or maybe the next one, but we'll see how it goes. But anyway, I just want to tell you that you don't have to worry about these tabs right here. The only one you really need to concern yourself with is collections. You don't even really need to care about this overview one. There's only one tab here that should grab your attention, and it's collections. Collections are essentially the tables, if you want to think of them like that. I know I already told you that there isn't a concept of tables in MongoDB, which is a NoSQL database system. Instead, we have like objects which behave like tables. So I said before that that'll make more sense to you when we start actually adding collections, but if you want, you can think of a collection as a table. But you see, if I go to the collections tab, we of course don't have anything. We have no databases. So these things will be created if they don't exist when we run queries. So for example, if you try to insert to a collection and it didn't exist, it would create it for you. So it doesn't matter that there's none there, but you can, if you want, create your own ones from here. So if I click on add my own data, I can create a database name. Let's call it Twitter clone DB, like that. And then collection name. This is essentially your table, so let's just create a test one for now. It doesn't matter too much about this, but I just want something for you to see. So I clicked create, and now we have this Twitter clone database, and then we have one test collection in there, one test table. And yeah, there's no results to see, but eventually if this had results, you'd see things in there. So there we go, I just wanted to create a collection for you to be able to see. But once again, you'll start seeing a bunch of collections in here when we move through the course. The first one you'll see most likely is going to be the users collection, which will hold the information about each user, because when we sign up, that's where we're storing the data. So let's go ahead and try and connect to this then. So if I go back to the overview tab right here, you'll notice we've got a connect button. So let's click on connect, and we get this pop-up appear. It looks kind of scary, but it's really not. So the first thing we need to do is add an IP address. And basically what this means is we're going to whitelist certain IP addresses to be able to access this database. This is useful for testing scenarios to make sure that people who aren't supposed to be accessing it can't access it. So you can set your own IP address. If I press this button right now, it will add my own IP address, or my current IP address, to this, and it'll whitelist it. But just to let you know, what that does mean is if your IP address changes, or if you work on this project on a different computer, you won't be able to connect, and you're going to get a connection error unless you add that IP address as well. So you can add multiple IP addresses, but I just want to make you aware that if you go down this route, you need to make sure you remember that if you go to a different machine which has a different IP address, or you connect to a different network or something like that, you won't be able to connect until you add that new IP address there as well. So to avoid that, you can just click allow access from anywhere. For me, I don't really care if people get access to this who aren't supposed to, because it's going to have our test data. What are they going to do with our data, really? A bunch of test users. So at least for development, I'm just going to allow any IP address to connect, so it's fine. So I'll just click add IP address, and that's done. So I've just whitelisted it so that all IP addresses can access this, just to save me the headache further down the line. Anyway, the next thing we need to do is create a database user. Now I'll just make the username anything you want. Let's just say admin, and the password can be anything you want as well. So I'll just say db user password, like that. So I've just made a password, db user password. Make sure you remember these, because you are going to need them in just a second. So remember the credentials you've added. So I'll click create user. Okay, great. So I've created my user now. The next thing to do is choose a connection method. You'll see it's the next thing along in this step. So I'll click the green button, and here we are. So this gives us a bunch of different options for connecting to our database. Now, you don't need to worry about the top one and the bottom one. We're going to go for the middle one, connect your application, because that is what we're trying to do, connect our application to it. And you can see that it's defaulted to Node.js. And that's because Node.js is the most common driver that's used to connect to this database. But there are a bunch of other options. If you want to connect with PHP, for example, you can, different versions. But I'm just going to leave it as Node.js, and this is the most recent version they offer as well. Well, the most recent version of the driver anyway. So yeah, I'll leave that like that. And then here we go. We have a connection string now. So the connection string down there is telling us that we need to replace the password with whatever password we just used, and then also the database name here needs to be replaced with whatever our database name is, okay, which is Twitter clone DB, the thing we just created. But anyway, we can copy that, but there's a button right here. If you click that, it will give you some more code to use, kind of like a complete code to connect to it, but we're not going to do that. We're just going to take this, and we will connect our own. So if I click copy, I've copied that, and let's go back to here, and we'll try it from app.js. So go to app.js, and the first thing we need to do is add MongoDB to our project, so we have to actually install that dependency. So I'll go down to here, I'll press Ctrl+C to stop my server instance, and in my terminal I'm going to write npm install MongoDB. Press enter, and let's see what that does. Okay, great, so we've installed MongoDB. Now we're going to install one more thing, and that's Mongoose. So type in npm install Mongoose. Fun fact: we could have done it. We could have installed both of those in one command. So I could have said npm install MongoDB space Mongoose like this, and it would have done both of them. So anyway, we've installed MongoDB, and we've also installed Mongoose. Now the MongoDB package that we've just installed is the native driver that allows us to talk to our MongoDB database. Okay. And then Mongoose, that we just installed as well, is an object data modeling library. Now, Mongoose just makes our life a little bit easier by allowing us to use kind of nicer queries that are just a little bit easier to work with. So Mongoose is just an abstraction level. It's built on top of MongoDB, so it just makes our queries easier. But again, you will see how that works later on. It's going to be quite difficult if I try and explain it to you right now, having not seen any Mongoose. So I'll try and explain that as I go. But for now, just make sure you've installed MongoDB and Mongoose. So now that we have both of those, let's go ahead and try and connect to it. So I'm going to say const mongoose equals require, and then put in mongoose in there like that. And then underneath that, I'm going to say mongoose.connect like this. And I'm going to paste that string in there that I copied from before, this one right here. So if you don't have it on your clipboard anymore, just go ahead and copy this again. And I realized I didn't put any quotes in there, so make sure you put this inside of double quotes like this. So I've copied and pasted that string in there. I'm going to update these fields. So I'm going to replace this part with my password. Oh man, I've already forgotten it. Which was db user password, I think. Then I'll scroll across, and the DB name was just Twitter clone DB like this. And that should be it, I think. I think we're good there. So this connect function returns a promise, which means we can add callbacks to it. So what we can do is, there's no semicolon at the end of that line. Keep that in mind, no semicolon. But what we're going to do is say dot then on the line below, like this. Dot then, and then also that we can do a dot catch, like this. Oops, dot catch. So we've added a dot then and a dot catch. Now, what these are, it's basically when this function returns, if it returns successfully, it will go to the then block. If it returns with an error or something goes wrong, it will go to the catch block. So inside of these two, we need to just put the code that we want to run. So in the then block, where it's successful, we can just put an arrow function like this, and it will run this code when it successfully connects. So we can say console.log and then database connection successful, it's just a message for us to know. And then what I'll do actually is copy that whole block and paste it in the one in the catch block, and I'll say database connection error like this. I'll put a space, and then I'll just add an error. So I'll add error, and that's going to be a variable we pass into this. So when it hits the catch block, it will call this function here, but it will also pass in an error for us, so we can just echo that right there. So let's give it a try. I'm skeptical. Surely it wouldn't work first time. There's got to be something I'm doing wrong. But let's give it a try. So I've pressed npm start. It's doing some stuff. Let's see. Okay, we've got some warnings about deprecations and stuff, but at the bottom you see database connection successful, so we know it worked. If you wanted to be sure that, if you were skeptical that it's worked and you think, why has this happened to work first time? If I change the database password to one that is wrong, and then try and connect, we should see an error. Which we do. We see an error because obviously the password was wrong. So I'm going to switch that back now to the correct one. And really, man, I'm actually impressed that I managed to get that right first time. So database connection successful. We know it worked. Ignore the deprecation warnings. We are going to address those in probably the next video. And we're also not going to connect to it here. We're going to move this into a separate file, but I'll show you how to do that in the next video.